What's going on, people? You live with Progressive Action TV. We're having a special guest. He's been with us maybe like two times already, and he has a special announcement. And he's running for a special position in the city, and he can explain it better than I can. So welcome on board to Senator Kevin Parker. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good, Tremaine. How you doing?
I'm good also. You know, I have to come check out your closet because your bow tie game is immaculate, bro.
Look, I'm just trying to make it do what it do. That's all. That's all.
You're definitely doing it. First of all, I would like to tell you thank you for being supporting not only transit workers, but your constituents throughout the city, because your bills touch not only the constituents in your district, but throughout the city. I want to give you a congratulations, not congratulations, but thank you for your service. Now you're running for a special position. It's a position where I don't think I ever heard someone want to go for. So I need for you to educate us the importance of this position. But I'm gonna give you the floor for a second before I start spitting my questions at you.
Okay, great. So first of all, again, thanks for having me on. And Kim, thank you for facilitating this with my crew. Again, I'm State Senator Kevin Parker. I represent the 21st District in Brooklyn, which is primarily, part of Canarsie, part of Flatlands, but principally Flatbush and East Flatbush, Midwood, Ditmas Park, Windsor Terrace, and Park Slope. I'm the majority whip in the New York State Senate, as well as the chairman of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee. And I've been serving in the New York State Senate for over 18 years. Well, now for 18 years. And so I've decided that next year, as we have city elections, that I would put myself up to provide some real leadership that I think that this city is going to need, particularly coming out of the pandemic, and I'm going to run for city controller. Now, the city controller's office has kind of three major functions. One is the treasurer for the city. So it deals with all the revenue functions, coming out with the revenue projections, signing city contracts, it's kind of the COO, the chief operating, the CFO, the chief financial officer for the city of New York, right? And then you have to understand the city as the fourth largest budget in the country, right? So understand that the city of New York has about a $90 billion budget. And so after the federal government, the state of California, and the state of New York, the city of New York has a budget that's larger than 48 states, right? If it was its own country, it'd be like the 12th largest country in the entire country, in the entire world, right? So it's a huge budget. And so dealing with the revenue movements of this city is part of what the controller does. The other functions that the controller has is that it is the chief auditor for the city. That is, that it has the ability to look at every agency and to examine every entity that receives money from the city of New York. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is that the city controller is the chair of the city's pension fund, which is a $221 billion pension fund, one of the largest in the country, probably about the third or the fourth largest pension fund in the entire country. And so there's a lot of money, a lot of analysis, and a lot of good that you can do being the city controller. And certainly I want to use my years of leadership and my years of experience to help the city come out of this crisis. I've spent, before I got elected, a lot of people don't know this, I worked for Carl McCall, who was the state controller, and I was his deputy director of government affairs. And before that, I actually worked on Wall Street and worked for the chairman of Payne Weber, in a capacity doing both government affairs work and municipal finance. But since I've been in the Senate, I spent 18 years on the Finance Committee and over a decade on both the Banking Committee and the Insurance Committee. So dealing with the financial needs of our city and state have been really my stock in trade. And so again, I'm just looking for an opportunity to provide that leadership and provide some ideas about how we need to move, on the city level in this capacity as city controller. The election is June 2021. I need folks to support me and to endorse me, and let's move forward and make sure that we do the things that need to be done in this city. And so I'll save a lot of my other commentary for your questions, because I think that much of what I want to say can be teased out based on your question. So I'll give you back the floor.
You basically answered all my questions, but, but I knew you was going to do that. But let me ask you a question. Why not go make a jump to mayor? Why not make a jump to governor, lieutenant governor? What's so special about the controller office that interests you besides your working with Kevin McCall and seeing what he has done and what's your interest?
Carl McCall. Kevin McCall is the Reverend. Carl McCall is the
my fault, Carl McCall. What's the interest in controller?
Again, I think it's about having opportunity to deal with the pension fund, which has a lot of opportunity to do investments in our community. I've believed very much for a long time that the reason why I got into office is to help people create full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits. And whether those are good, union jobs like DW Local 100 and the folks at the Transit Authority, or where my father worked, or whether it's in private business, I think that is the way that we stabilize our communities, right? And so we talk about, how do we stabilize, and particularly, in the communities I represent, these Black and Caribbean and Latino communities, income, right, from a good job, from an entrepreneurial, venture becomes the basis of good marriages, and good marriages become the basis of good families, right? And so what you're doing is trying to provide a economic underpinning for community to then provide all the other things that we look at and we think we need: youth services, safety in our communities, education for our children, a good housing stock, right? All of those things I think flow out of the ability for us to create jobs. And the other thing too, we also understand that labor market discrimination hasn't gone anywhere, right? And we have an economy that's moved from Wall Street to Main Street. And so the reality is that if we're going to stabilize our communities, right, with all of the things, dealing with all of the things that we talk about, you got to create full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits. And I think the Comptroller's office is the best place to, in fact, begin that conversation.
Yeah. So one of the jobs that I noticed of the Comptroller is determining prevailing wage and enforcing labor rights. And one of the issues that we had recently, on the MTA side, was that the MTA hired some contractors that wasn't getting prevailing wage. Now, how would you handle that if you was encounter a situation like that, as far as where an agency in the city is not giving workers prevailing wage, even though they don't have a union?
Well, that's part of the job, as you indicated, of the city controller's office, right? Is to, in fact, oversee contracts, sign contracts, and enforce contracts, right? And so some of it would be just day-to-day part of what the job calls for. But certainly prevailing wage is one of the things that I support, and one of the things that I know that we need in the city. And I think goes along with that function that I talked about in terms of, providing the income from New Yorkers that we need, particularly as we come out of this pandemic. The way that we're going to get out of this pandemic is not through a bailout. It's not going through taxing people. It's going to be through giving people the economic opportunity that they wanted from the very beginning. People in this city do not want to hand out, they want to hand up. And so we need to create jobs, and we need to put people back to work.
Yeah, and correct. So like when I look at an agency like the MTA and their spending, because the current controller wrote an article regarding the MTA spending, because they spend erroneously. $11 million every 2-3 months just in legal fees. That seems, who are they representing? Every person in the United States? I think that's a little egregious. When you look at their contractors, when you look at their consultants, does the controller have a say in that, or could the controller enforce that? How the MTA spend, or any other agency in the city spend?
Right. So the controller has, again, I talked about an audit function. And so the city controller has an ability to audit both every agency in the city, but then also every entity that receives city dollars.
Mm.
And so there's an ability to look at those dollars, how they're being spent, and then do enforcement on making sure that dollars are spent in the correct ways.
Okay. Is there any agency in the city that you just think that you want to just clean up as far as the way they spend their money?
The police department.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of the places that I would start out, auditing is the police department. As far as I can tell, the police department has never been audited. I think that as we start talking about things like, defund the police, and I'm not necessarily with that term, but I certainly think that there's a sense that we need more accountability and transparency in the NYPD, which is why I've led the charge both in the state Senate, and I hope to lead the charge in the city controller's office at dealing with the NYPD. That the state of New York was the first state in the country to do a comprehensive package of legislative reforms after the murder of George Floyd. We passed 10 bills. 4 of those bills were mine. And 2 other bills in the package, I wrote the original versions of, right? And so when we look at like 911 false reporting, when we look at, body cameras for state police, for state police officers, I wrote those bills. Since then, I've written about 15 other bills, including a bill that would require NYPD residency requirement. I've written a bill that eliminates qualified immunity, another bill that adds teeth to the CCRB, a bill that creates a non-police response to mental health and homeless calls, right? And so it's those kind of ideas that I think that the police department should be focusing on. But I think that we really ought to have a better handle on how the NYPD is using its funds and making sure that its management function is being done in the most effective and cost-efficient way as possible. I also want to get a good look at how much money we're spending as a city on excessive use of force lawsuits and wrongful death lawsuits, right? I know that they're significant, and we as taxpayers should not have to be paying those things. In fact, again, as a state senator, I've written a bill that will require police officers across the state to have their own liability insurance, and another bill that's a constitutional amendment to the state that would allow the state to take money out of an officer's pension if, in fact, if that officer was involved in a wrongful death. And so you would be able to take money out of that pension fund before you started taking money out of the officer's pension before you started taking taxpayers' dollars. We shouldn't have to pay for cops being bad cops, period. And so we need to look at what's happening with the NYPD. Again, not as a punitive measure to the police, but really an accounting for us as taxpayers to know where our money is going and to make sure that it's being spent, in the best and most effective way.
You sent chills down my body saying that, because that's so important. When you're dealing with bad police officers, there's no real punishment for them. At the end of the day, when someone sues the city, it doesn't come out of their pocket. And with qualified immunity being on the table, it will make some officers think twice because they will be directly impacted if they was to do something egregious out there to someone. It's no more of the taxpayers' money and they go get a slap on the wrist and things of that nature. So I definitely salute you for taking, I would say that's an unpopular stance because a lot of people don't believe in qualified immunity.
Or the elimination of it, you mean? Qualified immunity already exists, but I understand what you mean. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if it's unpopular. I don't think it's unpopular in this moment. I think people don't even really know about the fact that it's difficult to sue a police officer individually because of the notion of qualified immunity. And then
hold on. So qualified immunity exists in New York?
Oh yeah, it's national.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily a law, right? So qualified immunity is not a law. It's really a position that the courts have taken that essentially that if you are working like elected officials, for instance, have total immunity, right? There's certain things that if we're doing it as not if we break a criminal law, like a criminal thing, but like if there's something I'm doing as part of my job and you don't like it and you sue me and saying, Kevin, you shouldn't have taken money out of the MTA, and you sue me and say, Kevin voted to take money out of the MTA and you thought the money should be in the MTA, you can't sue me for that. I mean, you could put in the papers, but they're not gonna see it as justiciable. They're not gonna take it up as a legal matter because I'm just doing my job, right? And so I can't be sued for that. Oftentimes, when you look at the issues around Eric Garner, you had two major issues around the murder of Eric Garner in Staten Island with Officer Pantaleo. The first one was 50A, which is that it was difficult to have a proper grand jury proceeding because you couldn't see Officer Pantaleo or many of the other officers their records to see if they've been involved in these in other acts of excessive use of force, right? And so we fixed that, right? Senator Jamal Bailey passed that bill again when we did the comprehensive set of bills, right? The other issue that we had was the issue of qualified immunity, which is the officer, they essentially say the officer was doing this job, right? Now, even though the chokehold might have been at that time not against the law, we've recently made it against the law again when we brought up those bills. But in that moment, it wasn't against the law, it was against policy, but it wasn't against the law, right? And so think about this. There's things that as transit workers, you may do that may be against policy, right? And the MTA can fine you or whatever, or give you a write-up or whatever. But it doesn't mean you're gonna get arrested for it, right? And I get there is an apples and oranges comparison between choking somebody out and you going on a lunch break too early or something like that. I get it. But it's from an administrative perspective, it's treated almost the same way, which is that these are all acts seen as part of your job. What qualified immunity does is that it qualified immunity says that you can't sue anybody based on that, right? And my bill would eliminate qualified immunity in the state such that you as a person whose rights were violated or who was a victim of excessive use of force by the police could then not just you could follow up with a lawsuit, and you could have what they call a private right of action.
Oh, I got you. So removing qualified immunity is
Correct.
what we need to do. I got
Correct.
you.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's very important. For those who just tuning in, we got a lot of people watching on Facebook. We got some more people that just don't join the chat. If you have a question for Senator Parker, I guess you could raise your hand. I will unmute you. We got Michael Enriquez. Shout out to Mike. Denise, I see you.
Mike, what up?
Yeah, you met Mike before.
Yep.
Yeah, you met Mike before. Now, a lot of people don't know.
Mike liked to come to my office and wag his finger at me. I want y'all to all know. Mike, he look nice and calm right now, but when he be in there fighting on behalf of MTA workers, he ain't this friendly and smiley. So, hey, Mike, good to see you.
Now, I was going because you got too many bills out there. I mean, I don't know. It's like you write a bill every other day.
But every day.
Every day you write a bill.
That's my job. That's my job. That's what y'all sent me there to do.
And people don't understand. Like, if you don't have a senator or assembly person in your community that's not writing bills on your behalf, they serve no purpose. If you ask me, you know what I'm saying. So, you got a bill that says eliminates the MTA exemption from environmental quality review standards established by Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law. What's the importance of that?
Well, we drafted that bill. Actually, it was an MTA bill that's really about efficiency and that lines up the MTA standards with the CLCPA. We actually have now the most aggressive anti-carbon, but kind of pro-conservation and kind of pro-green legislation in the entire country. And so this bill is supposed to help us in the same way that the CLCPA is, but lining everybody up. Part of what happened when we did the CLCPA is that we created a state standard. We now want every agency and every municipality to kind of be following that same road, and so that hopefully gets us there.
When they say that a person forgot more than they remembered, you that guy. You forgot more than I remembered, man. It's like you too fluent with this stuff. Mike, what's up? You got a question for the senator?
Not yet. I just
Okay.
joined.
Oh, yeah. Nuke, what's on your mind, Nuke?
I'm just listening right now.
Well, everybody that's taking in our conversation.
Mhm.
Who's that talking now? I thought somebody said something. Um,
Let me talk a little bit, Tramel, about kind of, where I want to go with this, right? Because again, I talked a little bit about this office. A lot of people don't know what the city controller does, right? So people know Scott Stringer is the city controller now. Before it was Scott Stringer, it was John Liu. Before it was John Liu, it was Bill Thompson, right? And so this is an office that we've had an African American sit in before. I think is important in this moment as we look to have a recovery from this pandemic, to have somebody of color in this space who, in fact, again, knows our community, knows our issues, and particularly as it relates to a lot of the folks who are on this call. I know your concerns, not just because I've worked with Progressive Action and I've worked with local, Local 100. But my father was a transit worker. My father was a transit worker for 29 years. Sonny Parker began in the 1950s, actually got started working in the 1950s and started as a station cleaner and moved up from a station cleaner to the conductor, from a conductor to a motorman. I guess y'all call him a motor person now. I don't want Nuke getting mad. And then actually spent the last 15 years of his job as a dispatcher at J Street, right? And so, helping people on the job. And so, like, I've been around transit my entire life. Transit helped me buy this fancy bow tie, right? And I have a lot of respect for the hardworking men and women of Local 100, which is why I was the sponsor of the Tier 6 bill that we need to bring back and repeal Tier 6. For transit workers. I was the station cleaner assault bill. I did the conductor assault bill as well, right? So I authored those bills, worked with Diana Richardson on those important pieces of legislation. People should not, being assaulted as they're doing their jobs, and certainly we need to have the proper penalties and the proper deterrents for people doing that work. But we need to really, as again, we go forward, we really need to start thinking about how do we put everybody back to work? Again, New Yorkers don't want to hand out, they want to hand up. And, we need to create full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits. And what's happened in the Black community, so first of all, people don't understand this. Over 70% of the people who work in the United States work in small businesses, right? And those are businesses defined by less than $1 million in revenue and less than 25 employees, right? And so if we start talking about where we're going to create jobs going forward, it's not going to be the government, because the government has lost its tax base. It's going to be in businesses. And the question is, how do we bring those businesses back online? And that's the important part of what we need to do. And in fact, if you ask me, one of the things I've done as a state senator, that's been one of the most important things, is bring a small business development center to Brooklyn College, right? Because any of you who are entrepreneurs know that there's kind of two major things that people need as entrepreneurs. The first is access to capital. People need money, right? And we don't have enough access to capital, and my office can help do that. And the second thing that we need is technical assistance. That is, people need to understand the business of their business. In our community, Tony, we have people who know how to cook food, don't know how to run a restaurant. People could build a table, but can't sell furniture. We need to help them with that. And a lot of them, when you're running a small business, you're chief cook and bottle washer, right? And don't have necessarily the capacity. And what people need to learn is, are they going to do the business part of their business, or are they going to do the craft part of their business, right? So just because you can build a table don't mean you're the best person to sell furniture. So you might need to hire somebody as an employee to run the actual sales part of what you do while you focus on crafting good tables. Some people may be the opposite. Some people may be, great salespeople, and they may bring somebody in who they know is a great craft person to build a table while they sell the table, right? So like if you look at Apple, right? Everybody knows who Steve Jobs is, right? Because he's the carnival barker, right? Who sold Apple computers. Who's the guy the guy who chiefly designs the computers? Don't worry, I'll wait.
Nobody knows.
No, y'all know the guy. Y'all just don't put it together. His name is Steve Wozniak, right? And some of you've heard of his name. But Steve Wozniak is the guy who actually built the computers. right? And so, you know, because Steve Jobs wasn't an engineer like that. I mean, he wasn't the person who was sitting there. Now, he did help with some of the design schemes, right? But there's really like a clear differentiation between the guy who's actually building the computers and the guy who's selling the computers, right? And I'm saying that there are men and women out there who need to just understand the technical part of their business, making sure that their taxes done, making sure that they're applying for MWBE opportunities in the city, right? And so all of those things are things that the city controller really should be can be and should be working on, right? And I think there's a couple of different perspectives in which I am planning to do that. First, through economic reports on the boroughs, right? Looking at Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Staten Island, looking at where the opportunities are to bring people back to work, right? And having a real analysis on where we lost jobs at and where we gained jobs at during this pandemic. Everybody didn't lose money during this pandemic, right? So Tramel, I'm always telling people got to understand money as energy, right? And what we learned through the law of thermodynamics is that, you know, energy doesn't dissipate, right? But Earth, Wind, and Fire teaches us that it just recreates in another space and time, right? And so money didn't stop, it just moved, right? 3M, who makes masks, made money during this pandemic. Netflix made money during this pandemic, right? Grocery stores made money during this pandemic, right? Restaurants lost money. Department stores lost money, right? And so it's important for us to have a full picture of where money shifted to, so we understand. One, because we're gonna still be on the tail end, hopefully, of this pandemic as I take office, understanding where the opportunity is, but also understanding where we lost money and where we lost jobs, so we can get that done. And then, as the chair of the pension fund, working with money managers who are investing in businesses in New York City, right, is important for us. You know, first of all, the pension fund, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense, right? And so the number one aim of the pension fund is to make money for the pensioners, period. Social responsibility is part of that conversation, and it's not a false dichotomy. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, and so that means we can make a profit for the pensioners and simultaneously do some things that are socially responsible. But the big thing is to make money for the pensioners. And I believe that we can do that and invest in ourselves, right? And in our businesses and in our communities, and put our communities back to work. And so that's going to be, I think, a function of the pension fund. And then I think that there's a way that just using the bully pulpit of the city controller's office to work with nonprofit organizations, with agencies like CUNY, to increase the number of number of places where people have access to technical assistance. Brooklyn is the third largest city in the entire country. It only has 2 small business development centers, 2, for 3 million people, 2. Manhattan has 4, and it's the second smallest borough in the entire city.
So let me ask you a question. How do you feel about, like, they building the Amazon in East New York? How do you feel about that being a controller? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
The question is what the deal is.
Because it's not going to be union jobs.
The question, Tramel, the question, every job is not going to be a union job, right? Mm-hmm. And we want as many good union solid jobs as possible. But the question is what the deal was, right? Part of the reason why the first deal that when they were talking about coming to Queens fell through is because the deal was a bad deal, right? And nobody wanted to negotiate about it in daylight, right? But the reality is, the question is, what's the deal look like? And what are we giving? And when I say what the deal is, what are we giving up as a city and a state in order for Amazon to be there? All right. And that's why I haven't looked at the particulars of this, of the East New York deal. But the question is what the deal looks like. And I think as a city controller, I will be a person who looks at those things and weighs properly the impact on communities and how much we're chipping in or investing as a city, to make these deals happen.
Yeah, because
we don't want them coming in with that $15 an hour, type wages, especially a $1 billion corporation. We
again,
want them to pay the community
Kim,
a fair
Kim,
living wage.
again, we always want living wage. We have the highest, by the way, the state of New York, and this is something that I'm very proud of that I voted on as a state senator. We have the highest living wage. I'm sorry, the highest minimum wage in the entire country, right? Is it high enough? And but it's a state.
Yeah.
You know, wages are a state function, right? It could be a federal function, but it's mostly a state function, right? And so we have the highest minimum wage in the entire country that was just passed by the state. And there's some things that we can do around that. And so the question is what we look at and you know, what are the jobs, what they're looking for. Again, without seeing all the details, I don't want to say up or down, yay or nay, without a proper evaluation of what they're bringing to the table. But I agree with you, higher wages are better than lower wages for workers.
Yeah, I mean, what's the difference between minimum wage and the actual living wage? Because we could have the highest minimum wage in the company in the country, what we do due to gentrification and all this other stuff, that minimum wage may not even be enough. So people not even surviving.
Right. I'm not necessarily arguing that minimum wage is I'm not arguing that minimum wage is sufficient, but having a high minimum wage creates a floor, not a ceiling. Right. So it creates a higher floor, which means that even if people are making minimum wage, right? And most of the time we're not looking for, you know, adults to be making minimum wage, right? We're looking for, like, if you're working at Spencer Gifts in the mall, we want you making $15 an hour, right? If you're working in that kind of space, right? We want everybody working at other places. And so what I'm saying is looking at the kind of jobs they have and then what they pay. And again, that has to do with the deal. I don't know what the deal is, right? So I just want to keep coming back to, like, we are supposing in this conversation a set of facts that we don't know. And so what I'm saying is we should know the facts. In particular, what are the jobs? So you're saying that they're putting a warehouse there. I don't know what those warehouse jobs are. How long are they working? Do they get overtime? Do they get benefits? Like, those are all conversations that should be being had and that we certainly will look at. And I'll have more information next time we talk.
I mean, we can't have confidence that a company that's not governed by a union to do the right thing. Even with companies and agencies with unions, you know, the management seem to not do the right thing. Why isn't there some type of bill proposed that when these Fortune 500 billion dollar companies come to cities like New York, that they must be unionized before they come, to make sure that they do the right thing? Because they could come and sit down with you, Senator, and say, look, we're going to do the right thing, and tell that to your face. And then there's another thing actually going on the shop floor. I mean, I experience it here within a union. So I can imagine without one.
Well, two things. Let me look into that. There may be some legislation on the horizon. But let me also say that, again, when there's a agreement that's based on tax dollars being given, you have a contract or a memorandum of understanding that will usually govern that. And so if you're having an agreement with a company like Amazon and you're saying the jobs are going to be in this spectrum, they're going to pay this amount, this is the number of jobs you're going to have, and you're having that memorandum of understanding predicated on tax dollars or a tax break being given to that company as they're in your state or in your city, then you have an ability to negotiate the amount of money and hold them to account on what they're paying people and how people are being treated, so on and so forth.
How?
What do you mean how? I just told Jamal, I just told you how. You have a memorandum of understanding. You sign essentially a contract with them. And typically, again, those contracts are predicated on you giving them a tax break, right? As a city or a state, you were giving a tax break based on numbers of jobs, wages of jobs, so on and so forth, right? And that becomes your leverage. That memorandum of understanding becomes in the contract that you use to enforce the work.
Oh, I mean, I'm just going by my experience. We got all types of memorandum understanding, stipulations, all types of contractual stuff, and agencies like the MTA get away with murder every single day.
And you know what? And people, and I don't disagree with you. And I've been one of the people who have been arguing for 18 years that we need to do a forensic audit of the MTA. We're finally getting that done this year. And so hopefully we'll get some, a lot more information. So I'm not against you on that. I certainly said that I would look into the legislative thing that you suggested. But let me also suggest that even with a law, people were in violation of law every single day, right? And so we shouldn't see passing a bill or making something law that all of a sudden, is waterproof and everything's gonna be the way we want it to be. There always has to be proper enforcement, right, of laws, contracts, right, which is why we have courts, right? And so, so we'll continue to work on that.
So now, the city, almost every city in America is waiting for a bailout because of this whole COVID crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the comptroller race is next year. You said it was like next summer or something like that, right?
June 2021.
All right. Let's say that
primary. So people should understand that every number of years. Well, first of all, the city has term limits, right? And so most of the city folks are term limited, right? So the mayor's term limited, so he has to leave. The city comptroller's term limited. Jomani Williams, our public advocate, is running for his first full term as public advocate. And there are 36 members of the city council who are term limited. And so there's 36 seats out of the 51 that are up for new people to run for those seats. So there's probably somewhere around 200 candidates around the city who are running for office.
I mean, you're going to have a very important job next year, because I do believe that you're going to be elected. But what if the federal government don't give these cities the bailout like New York? Your job becomes even more important at that point.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I certainly believe that we will see a significant bailout, not just of the city, but of the state, and the counties and a number of other entities that need significant infusion of funds from the federal government. It's going to be really, really hard if there's no help from the federal government. But again, one of the first things I've talked about doing is putting together a plan, a task force of economic advisors, right? That's going to include business leaders, nonprofit leaders, members of the clergy, members of the labor unions, right? Community leaders, to sit down and with my staff, look at, again, what I talked about earlier, the economic impacts of COVID, where we are in the moment, and chart a course forward for the whole city. But I do tell you and know in this moment that a big part of that is just going to be about job creation. It's going to be about how do we create full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits? How do we continue to give people a hand up and put people back to work? And that's going to be the major part of it, because if we don't get something from the federal government, that also means there's going to be less money coming from the state, right? Because remember, most of the revenue that we get in the city comes from the state, and so that's going to be an important part of what happens. And so I do expect that a federal bailout will happen, but if it doesn't, we'll be prepared, and we'll continue to work to make sure that we have the economic opportunities that people need. One of the good things, there's actually two good things about the city of New York. One, we're the financial hub of the world, literally, right? So there's no shortage of money here, right? Next year, even without a federal bailout, there's going to be $90 billion spent in the city, 90 billion, right? And so there's always money. I don't want people to get caught up in what I call the Dunkin' Donuts maneuver. People always have you looking at the hole and not paying attention to the donut, right? So next year, they're going to spend $90 billion. Next year, bailout or not, there's going to be about $20 billion in MWB, not MWB, but in contracting out, right? So remember, the city has to buy everything it doesn't make itself. And that's upwards of $20 billion every year, right? And so that money is still going to be spent. And those all become opportunities to put money in the hands of New Yorkers. That becomes opportunities to do good women and minority business enterprise development, right? Those all become opportunities, right? And so sitting in the shadow of Wall Street, having a very, very large city with a lot of people in it are all great opportunities for us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and do the work that needs to be done in order to rebuild our economy.
Excellent. Now, we only got Senator Parker for another at least 5 minutes. So if you guys want to ask him any questions, let me
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
As comptroller, what is how do you help fix the disparity between the districts as far as education is concerned. Because, you know, some districts get more money. That's why you have the shuffle with the parents trying to get their kids in District 2 opposed to state.
I don't know what happened to her.
First thing we're gonna do is fix Kim's her Wi-Fi. So you know, as the chairman of the Energy and Telecom Committee,
I don't know. I can't hear you guys are freaking on me. What happened?
nothing. I don't want no smoke. But
Did you guys hear me or no?
we can. Yeah, we heard you. We heard you at the end. You ready? You ready for the answer?
Because I can't hear you guys. Nothing. Yes.
Okay. So I think that's a really, really good question. And as a state legislator, and especially sitting on the finance committee for 18 years, I've spent a lot of time, and I've been one of the champions around CFE, the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, right? And there's still money owed to the city from the state government based on CFE. And so the idea of educational finance equity is really, really important. Right now, the city of New York, unfortunately uses a equality formula, and they essentially give all the schools equal amounts of money. The problem is that even in my district, the schools in, let's say, Park Slope don't need the same money as the schools in East Flatbush because they're not dealing with the same problems. And we need an equity formula, not a equality formula, right? And we need to be fighting for equity in the educational system, because the problem is not that they're not getting enough money, because they're dealing with issues in many parts of the districts and many districts that other districts are not dealing with. And we need a formula that in fact addresses it on that basis.
Excellent. Let me ask you, is this rate saturated? Is this controller rate saturated?
I'm not sure what that means.
Is it so many people running for mayor? Is the same thing with controller?
There's 4 people running there's 4 people who I understand in this moment are running for city controller. So I'm not sure if you think about that as being saturated or not.
Nah, that's not bad. It's like 8 people from mayor. I'm like, where's all these people coming from? It's pretty wild. But we have confidence in you. We're going to push you. You have been a supporter of this platform for a very long time. We're going to make a donation. You know, we was looking at what the union was giving you. They're $1 million donation. They're $1 million company. They was giving you $1,000. So if we give you $10, you should be good. You're the controller. You should understand that. But we got you. We go put something together for you. And we're also going to put your donation link on the page.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And keep it stagnant there. Mike, any question for the senator before he leaves?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you there. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, so just kind of off topic, but I know you were talking about how it's important for small business owners like to work on the business and not in the business. Did you read The E-Myth?
I didn't.
Oh, well, that's a book that touches on that same exact topic. I'm like, you're spitting it verbatim.
What's the book called?
E-Myth. E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
Yeah, no, I haven't read it, but I've actually, again, I've spent my life doing economic development and small business development. If I go back in my history a little bit, before I talked about working, you know, since I've been in the Senate, working for Carl McCall, who's the state controller. Prior to him, I worked on Wall Street for the chairman and the president of UBS, Payne Weber. But prior to that, I actually worked for the first Governor Cuomo, Governor Mario Cuomo, and I worked in what was then the Urban Development Corporation, now the Economic Development Corporation. And I did women and minority business development, and I did regional economic development for them. And so small business development has been something that's been a passion of mine, not because I care about petty bourgeois capitalism, but I think that it's critical, particularly in our communities, because we don't talk about labor market discrimination, that if you want to talk about where you're going to put back vast amounts of Blacks and Latinos back into the workforce, we're going to need to do it ourselves. And so you have, if you care about Black jobs, then you have to care about Black entrepreneurship. If you care about Latino jobs, you got to care about Latino entrepreneurship, because that's the only way it comes about. All of a sudden, Amazon, and I guess, like, you know, I'm saying that the Amazon question is important, but for me, it's not overly critical, because what you do on Pickens Avenue is going to be more important than what you do at Amazon, right? what you do on Eastern Parkway is going to be more important than what you do at Amazon, right? Because that's where the jobs are being created, right? And one of the areas that, like, again, I know about that I really want to bring to the fore and get us talking more about is the clean energy economy. As the chairman of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee, I've been dealing with the issue of the clean energy economy, for almost 20 years, right? I helped negotiate the CLCPA, right? I'm the one who passed the bill that creates an environmental justice panel that reviews the work of the CLCPA to make sure that as we, in fact, go to a cleaner environment and we create opportunities, that we both clean up Black and Latino communities and we produce economic opportunities. And that environmental justice piece is absolutely critical, right? This is something that Van Jones wrote a book about 10 years ago, right? Called the green economy, right? The green collar economy, sorry. Right. And the green collar economy is nothing but the blue collar economy and the white collar economy for a green purpose. Right. And so as we, start transferring more of our energy resources out of dirty fuels like gas and oil, right, and go to things like, solar, wind, and hydro, right, we need to be looking for the opportunities for people in our communities to get involved in those businesses. And it's not just building wind turbines or putting solar panels on people's houses, but it is clean energy marketing, clean energy accounting. It is doing scientific research on what the next substance they're going to use to do solar panels with, right? It's a whole myriad of things. It's people doing what they call energy audits, right? One of the biggest things that people are not talking about now in the context of us doing the CLCPA is that in the next 30 years, we're going to have to literally replace every single vehicle that is not a clean energy vehicle with a clean energy vehicle. So that's something like 2.5 million vehicles are going to have to get replaced in the city. Wow. Right? And people are not thinking about that. We have tons of buildings. This is an old state, so we have old buildings. We have tons of buildings that need to be retrofitted. If you're somebody who's a carpenter, you really need to start understanding environmental retrofitting, right? If you're somebody who's interested in this, that you need to know how to be what they call an energy auditor, where you can go in and do the measurements and understand wind flow and airflow in buildings and how do you reduce that airflow in buildings, right? The average building in the United States has the equivalent of an open window. The equivalent of one open window. And I know my house is drafty as hell, so I know mine. No, I'm just joking. I've actually had mine sealed up. But a lot of houses don't have, and a lot of people's businesses are not properly sealed, and they don't have insulation. There's a lot of leakage coming from around windows. That's all stuff that can be fixed, and those are jobs that people in our community can do, right? And so when I talk about the clean energy economy, it's about how do we bring that economy online? How do we work with our community to build more of those businesses that are getting those contracts to do that work, right? And so that's just the beginning of that conversation. But that's where I want to take this city and make sure that as we have this, economic rebound, that it becomes a one that's led by jobs, right? Because remember, the last recovery we had was a jobless recovery, right? With all due respect to your boy Obama, he led a jobless recovery, right? And so Wall Street came back, but Main Street didn't. This time we need to make sure that the lead back, that the recovery is led by Main Street, not Wall Street.
Why Obama got to be our boy? Obama got to be our boy. Oh, before we go, Tony G has a question for you. He's up now. He's ready.
Oh, I've been waiting all night for this.
Go ahead, Tony.
Just need to know, like, after we get you into it, or could I?
Hold on, Tone. Yeah.
You got the same internet I got.
Throw the nuke on the same Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Try again, Tone. Your sound crazy.
Okay, can you hear me now?
A little better.
Okay. I want to know, what can I do to help you fix the transit? And we
can't hear you. We can't hear you, bro. Only thing we heard, what we can do to help you. I don't know what happened after that. You went into robot mode.
Okay, let me see if this.
Obama,
Oh.
boy, you got the Obama phone. Obama,
Obama, his boy, right?
we see his boy Obama.
Could you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that better? Yeah.
Yes.
Like, well, how can I help fix this trend as far as the tier and as to the any positions that trying? We're talking about the audit. You will be able to as controller.
Okay, so I missed the whole middle of that. Can we do this, Tramel? Can we set up a call? You know, I'm happy to help and talk to people anytime. So
Yeah, we'll set up.
And get Tony on the hard line so we can have this conversation.
Yeah, Tone, we got to give you a call, a personal call with Senator Parker.
All right, let's make that happen.
Okay, great.
Senator Parker, it was a pleasure once again.
No, the pleasure's all mine.
Just let us know how we can help you. If you want us to get anything out there online, send us your campaign material.
Absolutely.
Before I do every show, I will put it up on the show to talk about it, to remind you know what we're doing.
There's three things. I want people, if people can come out to my go to my website, is www.kevinparker2021.com. Again, that's www.kevinparker2021.com. Visit my website. If you can sign up to volunteer, we certainly need volunteers and people to help. Obviously, you folks are members of the union, and certainly as you talk to your union leadership, you should let them know that you're supporting me and that you think that and they do listen to you, Denise. Don't shake your head like that. You know, you should let them know that you're supporting me and that you want the union to support me and to officially endorse me for it. And then certainly, obviously, as you talked about, Tramel, you know, any financial contributions that people can make to the campaign would be particularly grateful, particularly New York City residents, because we have a matching program that's 8-to-1. And so if you're a New York City resident, every dollar that you give me up to $250, max, you know, the maximum contribution is $2,000. Michael, just so you know, and I don't want you breaking the rules and a $4,000 check. So right up to $2,000. But every dollar up to $250 is actually matched 8-to-1, right? For New York City residents. And so as many New York City people to contribute, even a $10 contribution, is matched 8-to-1. Your $10 contribution, turns into $800. I mean, let's go for it. I'm just saying. They make 30 million a year. For them to give that amount of money, we got you though, man. We don't want to make it happen. Make it happen. Call your boy Earl and tell him to
That's your boy, Earl. Earl, for no reason.
Yo, y'all should run up on them and turn them upside down. Make them pockets look like rabbit ears. Y'all know what we do.
Look, you may not get nothing now for being on this platform. They'll be like,
look, we're all rowing in the same direction, and I really appreciate the opportunity, to address your folks and to continue to work with you. We've been working together for a number of years. We talk frequently. I think that everybody doesn't necessarily always agree, but I always tell people that unity doesn't mean uniformity, right? Unity doesn't mean uniformity, but I'm as committed to the issues that you are, and we're gonna keep working. I see Danny's on now. Danny, you got a question before I go? I don't want you saying that I didn't give you a chance to talk, and then you making videos talking about how Senator
it's all right. I joined in kind of late, but Senator Parker, I haven't had. It's nice to meet you. I heard great things.
Likewise.
Just want to ask. I know you led a big sponsorship of the Tier 6 reform bill.
Yep.
Do you see anything still moving forward, leading this fight for Tier 6?
I see a great opportunity for that Tier 6 bill to move. I think it's going to be up to the union and the members of Progressive Action to push really hard on members. I expect to reintroduce the bill in January. I want to say congratulations to my leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the majority leader of the New York State Senate, and Mike Gianaris, our deputy leader, for bringing us to a place where we went from 40 members to 43 members. And so we now have what they call a veto-proof majority. So if we get to pass it, so last time the governor vetoed it, now we have a veto-proof majority. If we get it passed, either the governor has to sign it, or we can come back and we can overturn his veto on it. And so that's what a veto-proof majority looks like for you. I think that we're in great position to get the reform that we're looking for on Tier 6.
How about this? Let's pull back that Tier 6 and let's make this 2050, since we veto proof now.
20 and out. 22 and out. I'll take that.
Wait, because then everybody on this call, there'll be no more progressive action because all y'all be out tomorrow. Get out of here.
That's true. That's not true.
Senator Parker, I know you're very busy and you got other things to do.
Never too busy for my friends at Local 100.
Could you tell the people about your Instagram page before you go? Because you be doing some important interviews there yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, if you want to check me on my website, it's www.kevinparker2021.com. But I'm also on Instagram, and I'm actually on Instagram in two places. My Kevin Parker for NYC Comptroller is new. So Kevin Parker for NYC Comptroller. Or Senator Kevin Parker. So I have on Thursdays I do an IG live, and I've had some good guests. I'm not as great of a host as Tramel, but I'm working on it.
I'm learning from you, bro. Trust me.
Came up. I've had Eric Adams on, who's running for mayor. I had my good friend Eljoy Williams, who's a political consultant and the head of the Brooklyn NAACP. I've had Maya Wiley on. Actually, my first guest was Maya Wiley, who's also running for mayor on the show. I've had Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. I've had Senator Chuck Schumer. I've had Assemblywoman, Attorney General Tish James on it. So, we try to get some, Wayne Riley, Dr. Wayne Riley, who is the president and CEO of Downstate Medical Center. And so, we've had some good people on there to talk about the various things that are going on, whether it's been the election or the pandemic. Just trying to give information to the people the same way you are, right? Just trying to make sure that you can't have enough information. And in this century, information is the biggest commodity, and so we have to make sure that people know what they need to know.
I heard you go be first in line for the vaccine.
I might be second in line. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with this. Look, I ain't gonna front. I tell people like, yo. Watch the first 10 minutes of I Am Legend. I keep telling people them zombies came not from the disease, they came from the cure. So I might be the second person and I'm scared of needles also. So Denise, you gonna come hold my hand while I take the shot?
Of course.
Thank you. I need a lollipop too. Like this guy, so. No, we'll see. Look, there's 3 vaccines out there. I'm actually very happy that the governor's actually doing an independent, kind of his own little FDA situation where he's having literally the state look at the vaccines before they bring it to New York. And so we're actually doing our own trials and looking at some things here through the State Department of Health. And so I expect that the vaccine is going to be very, very safe.
Did you see the news today about they got 170, I think, 1,000 doses of vaccine due to New York December 15th?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm behind you in line. I just want to let you know that.
Yeah. Well, look, they're saying that they're saying by April they expect that 100 million Americans are gonna get the vaccine. That sounds like a lot, but we'll see. We'll see. Adoption is going to be a big part of it. And the sooner that people feel comfortable about adopting it, and this conversation is a real conversation because people don't feel comfortable, right? And particularly in Black and Latino communities, we don't feel comfortable because of our history of being experimented on, like the Tuskegee experiment, right? As well as this reckless president of yours, right?
That's the second president you put on me, bro.
That's Danny's boy. That's Danny's boy. He just got here, so Danny got to hold his current president. That's what you get for being late. You come on time, you don't get the current president.
Hey, I was watching the whole thing since the beginning. I just came in late to the conversation. That's all.
No, but it's a real conversation because of this historical dynamic, and that's why I thought the importance of the governor coming forward and saying that he's going to do something through the Department of Health to verify the safety of this vaccine, I think is going to be absolutely critical in the adoption process here in the state of New York.
Well, I see your boy. That's the governor.
But again, we need to make sure our frontline workers are the first ones to receive it, right? And so doctors and nurses, police officers, transit workers, you know,
leave us out of that one, bro. Leave us
We
out of
could,
that. Let's just focus on
frontline work, and I stand by that. I've been forward saying that our frontline workers need to be the first ones who get access to the vaccine.
let's just focus on tier 6, all right?
right.
You wanted to talk about this. I was talking about Danny doing tier 6, and now, you know, all right.
I just asked you a question and you went into the monologue, the Kevin Parker monologue, and it led to this. But let's just focus on tier 6.
All right, cool.
We're happy that you came onto the platform again. We're looking forward to speaking to you again, maybe like a few months, 4 months down the line, just to see where you at with your campaign.
All right, let's make it happen.
And to make sure that our campaign funds deposited into your account.
Yep. Let's make it happen. Let's make that happen. I'll have my treasurer call you tomorrow.
8 to 1 sound good. You said $10 equals 800. Yeah, we went
Kind of like the money y'all make at transit. 8 to 1.
8 to 1. I hear that.
Man.
MTA never meant ATM over here. That's the old, I think that's the standard that you say your father. That's that when during his era, not my era.
Yeah, he was tier 1.
Oh, see, look, he had everything.
He was tier 1.
He had everything. All right. So thanks you guys for tuning in. Very important conversation. KevinParker2021.com. Make sure you guys log on, donate, spread the word, do what you got to do. Let's support. We'll catch you guys later. Peace.